Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and around this time, a couple years ago, I made a video about a certain morale-boosting member of the tower by the name of Eva Levante. If you're new to Destiny, you have no idea who this character is, and you may not know all of the crazy stuff that went along with her presence in the tower. There were a lot of the silly little theories that kind of surrounded her, and I kind of played Plague into coming up with some of those. As a reminder, you might see that a couple of the videos that I have here are showcased with me in pink. That was because October was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'll have a different color scheme for November, as that is also, what is it? I guess Men's Health Awareness Month is technically what it's called? I don't know. But something similar to that. I'll get the official stuff going later on. Originally, to be a civilian of any kind in the tower, you had to be pretty remarkable. You had to be a person of talent, be it in combat tactics, organization, logistics, or otherwise. Eva was really no exception. She was one of those individuals that set herself apart from others in a different way than most, and that was with her art. For old time's sake, let's read her grimoire card. Eva Levante provided services to the tower long before she actually took a place in it. Guardians would call for her work again and again, looking for marks of distinction, both new and old, and she began to craft emblems and shaders for the bold and discerning. These days, she has set up her shop in the tower, taking quiet pride in the Guardians who train, fight, and fall under her signs. What I never really pointed out before about Eva was how behind the Guardian she is. I don't mean in power, no, of course not on that angle. That should be obvious with her not being a Guardian. She was so in favor of those that went out into the field and fought for humanity, and she made it known as often as she could. She really pushed to ensure that festivals that honored the dead and the lost were brought back into the tower as well, and not just left down in the city. Same with those that would promise new beginnings and new life. And so you have Eva to thank for the Festival of the Lost and the Dawning, in case you're unsure what I mean by this. It did take a bit of prying to get Ikora on board with it, however. To live is to experience loss, Eva said. My husband and child are dead. My friends, my neighbors, the children I watched over in our road to the city, all gone. The festival celebrates their lives with both joy and sorrow. A fine tradition for the city, Ikora replied. What meaning does it hold for the Guardians? A bit of light in a dark time. That is enough. We have greater concerns, and this is no time for games. All Guardians were once lost, Eva said. We honor your spirits as well. Eva also believed in a lot of humanity's finer traits, those of love and a willingness to help one another. Since we're highlighting the old grimoire quickly, let's check out The Dawning, since it highlights another old favorite of mine. Wonder what happened to her anyway. Pass me those lanterns, would you? Eva said. And that wrapping paper. There's so much left to do. They drive their sparrows on the edge of the abyss, not looking at the darkness, laughing. Laughter can be better than food. We must make time to celebrate, even when we are surrounded by darkness, or we lose hope. And hope is important. It brings us together and keeps us marching through the freezing cold. So much pretending, Eva. I can't pretend. Those days are gone. Do you think I spent a week coaxing Ikora into making the Dawning Crystal just to pretend? Who will save us from the darkness? The despairing Guardian or the joyful one? Love and joy, Eris. That will save us. This is how I show my love. Then I wish you a happy dawning, Eva. I wish that for all of us. Okay, that's all the old information on Eva. I wanted to cover it quick as a refresher for everyone, since, frankly, well, she hasn't been around with us in over a year. I even forgot some pieces behind her, and I kind of feel bad about that. For instance, the part about Eva's family, I melded that together with Amanda's family on their way to the tower. I forgot how tragic Eva's life was leading up to her moments in the city and subsequently in the tower with us. Thanks to the Festival of the Lost event this year, we were promised a murder mystery over the course of time. We got our first part of that with Master Ives this week, but that's not the important part to me. You see, Eva's story expands a bit more thanks to a 5-part entry set simply entitled Eva's Journey, though I intend on reading these entries in another video entirely, as I want to for every book that Bungie has set out for us at this point in audiobook format. I'm only going to pull a few excerpts from these pages for reference as we go. Sorry if you were looking for the book read in full, we'll do that at another time. Just consider this more my interpretations of everything going on, if nothing else. Anyway, the question on everyone's minds at this point, or at least I hope so now, what happened to Eva Levante? Before we get too far into the readings, I wanted to have 2 scans play. Both of these deal with the old emblem and shader maker, and they paint a different picture from what we might read as we go along. Just try to remember them as we go through these entries and we go through my interpretations of everything. I do feel they're very important.
Look at all these inventory notes. Looks like everyone is trying to get the tower's market back on track. Tess, Banshee, Rahul, Eva Levante, they're all working together on this stuff. I keep expecting to show up in the bazaar and see Eva Levante here. This spot's right around where she used to set up shop. I haven't heard much about her since we reclaimed our home, other than that she survived. No one's heard from her in a while, though.
Chapter 1 of Eva's Journey is entitled Just Another Day at the Tower. Here we see both Eva and Tess planning a sigil which will mark the end of the Siva Crisis, the large threat we dealt with in the Rise of Iron expansion a couple years back. This is interesting on a couple of fronts, but I want to keep things generally related to Eva today, but well, let's just say it explains a bit of time displacement and disparity that we'll kind of see later on. Zavala was the one in charge of picking the colors for this emblem, and the two were scoffing at the color choices, feeling he should never be in charge of anything remotely related to fashion or, well, anything artsy whatsoever. I mean, unfortunately, the guy's good at making scarves, but that seems to be about it. Both Tess and Eva have a rather healthy friendship, it seems, but Eva is such an easygoing person that it's hard not to care for her in some way, shape, or form, even just to appreciate her as an artist. Over the loudspeaker, we hear the order. Evacuation Order 77 is in effect. This is not a drill. All civilians report to designated evacuation areas immediately. Tess was the first to the door, and both of them ran out to the mad dash of people that were in Tower North, all following the evacuation order. From this smattering of people, Tess and Eva are both split up. Eventually, she comes to find what had happened and who was the cause of this evacuation in the first place. Then the roof came down as a large sphere crashed to the decks, Cabal clamoring from the pod, struggling against their bulky armor as they began to fire at the civilians. But who else would save them but the one-horned, raise-lighter-wielding Lord Shaxx himself? Blasting through a wall and rushing the Cabal, he saved the group and helped Eva to her feet. What I'm unsure of is if this scene is the same one that plays out in the Homecoming mission, but I would almost say it's not. The group that we happened upon may be another group that Shaxx is protecting, given the time difference of us arriving at the city and already seeing the Cabal sieging the tower pretty heavily. There would have to be more than one group of civilian escortees in the tower, after all. Shaxx asked Eva in particular to help him, and what a gentleman he was about it. The helmeted face of Lord Shaxx turned this way and that, taking in the room. 2 quick strides brought him to her side, and with a surprising gentleness, he helped Eva to her feet. "Madam," he intoned, and she could feel the bass of his voice in her chest. "I need your help." They left the vicinity of the Cabal attack and headed off to a group of City Hawks, the Osprey-looking ships that we see around Titan and in the tower, where they all loaded in and were taken to the city for barricaded holdouts. This was after Shaxx put a hand on Eva's shoulder and left her with one word, leaving to another scene of fighting. Comrade. If I didn't like Shaxx enough already, I'd certainly do from this chapter. A powerhouse, yes, but a kind one. For Eva, kindness was one of the traits that she felt was necessary no matter the circumstance. I can only imagine what she felt as that happened. This hulking mass of a man, this titan that was usually just a brute, really leaving her with a sense of camaraderie and togetherness. Shaxx trusted her, and he wanted to leave some kind of trust back with her. The setup for this book is pretty well known if you've played the opening to the Red campaign. I'm assuming everyone here has, but to have additional perspective on these events, especially from those that lacked any light at all, is a welcome addition. To have it from the perspective of Eva, whom cared so deeply for the well-being of Guardians, whom she fought to protect her and others, is even better. Chapter 2 is called Loss of Light, and if you can't tell what's going to happen from just the title alone, then thanks for stumbling on this video that you have no idea what I'm talking about at all. But seriously, it's going to get bad, and I think we all know that. There's a major part of importance here to read, as it sets up events that make Eva who she is the rest of the way throughout this book, or at least I have a feeling. Valentina and her son, Louis, Peregrine District, apartment block 10, 4th floor. It's the one. An explosion nearby cut her off, but she shouted into the comms unit all the louder, "It's the one with the green awning, please." The voice of the militia woman on the other side of the line was emotional. "I'll send a unit, but ma'am, the fighting all across the district is, did I not give you my tower clearance code?" Eva's voice scared her, a whip crack of anger. A pause on the other end. "Yes, ma'am. I'll go myself. Tazi out." Remember in the old Festival of the Lost card how Eva lost a lot of her family? These may very well be the last of them. To save them would be extremely important to Eva, and I'm sure it's one of the biggest reasons that she fights the way that she does. She gets in touch with this militia woman named Tazi, and, speaking of the militia, we see them in action a bit as they're fighting off the Cabal ground troops behind wooded-up locations. It's kind of odd for us, or at least uncommon, to at least see the militia, so this is a nice welcome change to see the Lightless actually in action. Eventually, they call in Guardian support, and a hunter and warlock show up to take out what Cabal they can. Pushing them back, they run off to take out the group in full, until suddenly, severed. The Guardians reel from the loss of light as the Traveler is sealed up. They're both cut down by the Cabal, and that's when Eva takes it upon herself to get children out the back in the building. She takes the communications unit that she used before to contact Tazi in case she needed to get in touch with anyone else as well. As much as she knew it would help to keep in touch with anyone down the line, the message she received was not what she wanted to hear. A hushed voice said, "Ma'am?" Her own voice, low and shockingly gruff, she answered, "This is Eva Levante. Is this Tazi?" A pause. "Tazi's dead. She wanted me to make sure someone got back to you, though." A long pause. Eva fought the urge to scream. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Levante. Block 10 is just gone. I think some of the automated defenses managed to come online early in the fighting, and one of their command ships must have crashed." Eva didn't hear the rest of the words. Sadly, if you look down into the city, you can see the amount of holes and pockmarks that fill the ground after the Cabal assault. Crater after crater after crater, in fact. It's just full devastation for the city, and I can only imagine the amount of actual loss to life we've had. Chapter 3 is entitled Hiding at Home. Only 2 hours have passed since the Cabal started their assault on Tower North. Eva is sitting silently as she grieves the loss of her family, or what was left of it, but is then brought back by a member of the Consensus who says, "Eva, we don't owe them anything." A gruff cough, one of the other civilians. Everyone's voice was a grinding imitation of each other. Ash filled the air, and no one could clear their throat. Eva clasped a rag to her mouth as she answered, croaking, "How dare you?" Her voice rose with anger. "Your whole life they've kept you safe, and now you want to just abandon them?" 4 Guardians that had been wounded were on the ground in the ash-filled area that they resided in. All the bombarded started to kick up fires, and the ash was just as devastating to those on the ground as any explosions that may have occurred. The Guardians were a Titan, a Hunter, and 2 Warlocks. Of course, Eva also had to look into their fashion senses while she had them there, along with looking at the Consensus member whom was just dressed in official garb. This was enough to really make her not trust the Consensus member too much, but care for the Guardians. Though I think that's a bit of a joke. The group is cut off in their arguments of whether to leave and abandon these Guardians, however, by the voice of Commander Zavala. "We are abandoning the city. We have evacuated everyone we could, but the Cabal now hunt Guardians in the streets. If you are able, you should make for the wilds." Eva felt as if she'd been physically struck. "The Cabal have affixed a device to the Traveler and severed our connection to the light. We cannot hold the city, and we cannot protect you." There was a long pause, as if he was weighing his words carefully. When he spoke again, Zavala sounded very, very tired. "We are setting a rally point elsewhere in the system. Watch for a broadcast. We will return to the city someday, but I do not know when." Another pause. "Be safe. Be brave." And he was gone. Everyone in the group except for Eva started to cry silently so as they would not give away their position. The group looked to Eva for support. Where would they go? What should they do? How should they survive? Eva felt it more necessary than before to keep the Guardians with them as they went through the city. She felt if they could be nursed back to health, they could fight and help to keep us all safe and alive. After all, everyone lost their light at this point. They were all on equal footing. They made for Twilight Gap, the last place they could think to hold up, and an area which we moved through in our escape from the first couple weeks after the bombardment had begun. If you recall, Lord Shaxx had repurposed some of the grounds of Twilight Gap into a crucible field since, well, almost ever. It seemed odd that we didn't have that field returned for training exercises after the Red War, but I guess it would make sense now. Chapter 4 is called The New Normal. Eva and group were able to settle in at the Gap, but it was largely due to how much attention Eva had paid to the low chatter about the Cabal. She knew they were systematically clearing out buildings, and she was able to take this to her advantage, moving from building to building to keep everyone else safe. The Cabal were clearing out civilians as well as Guardians, tightening their control in the city. All the group could do was run small groups into the city for supplies like food, clean water, anything they might need to survive the coming months. Eva would be the organizer, and this would come from all of her logistics expertise within the tower. This made her invaluable to efforts as time went by. Eventually, Zavala's words came through the comm unit she kept with her still. "If there is any light left in the system, we rally on Titan." The 3 Guardians that had survived went into a meeting room to discuss what to do. The Titan, sadly, had been lost on the way to the Gap, lost to his wounds. The 2 Warlocks were revealed to be sisters. Whether this meant by blood or by oath is unknown, but their names were Trin and Tam. Not sure if there's a story there that I can't find in reference. Might want to let me know in those comments if you think of anything or find anything that I wasn't able to. The hunter's name was Ramos, and I can't help but think back to the Ramos in Al Sector. Ramos, however, wasn't regarded as a guardian in Al Sector per my remembrance of the story, and Al Sector as a group was meant as a civilian organization. I don't think they're the same, but if you feel different, again, let me know below. This one's up for debate, perhaps. Anyway, the 2 Warlocks wanted to go to Titan. The Hunter wanted to stay on Earth. How un-Hunter-like of you, Ramos. Eventually, all 3 decided to stay on Earth, and the little group that Eva had with her turned into something more. It became an operation. An underground was formed, and she was the organizing head of it. We get a couple hints at the actual loss that Twilight Gap had presented, with classrooms being mentioned. This was a livable region and area, so I can only guess who might have been here at the time of the battle, during the time of Saint 14 and the early days of the city. Hopefully everyone was evacuated. Then again, you could suppose that some scavengers brought back some chalkboards, but I'm less willing to believe that, though, for obvious reasons of it making them a big walking target. Eva didn't make her presence known to many, even though she could have gotten word out from the field to pretty much anyone she wanted while she was operating the underground. She was able to contact Tess, and only Tess, about what she was doing, possibly where she was, but that was it. We don't really know if she was able to reach out to many more, or if Tess had told many others that Eva was still alive or what she was doing. Eva stayed to carry on the work of organizing the underground, to keep it safe and moving through areas, along with organizing parties and mounting rescue or supply operations. This last line tells us something about a time period for the Red War, however. That was how the months of the Red War passed for Eva Levante. I'll leave it there for now, but at least we have a bit more of an understanding for time with the Red War and the toll it took on humanity. Falls in line with another theory of mine, but anyway, for another day. The final chapter is called The Good Fight. Eva is run down and taking a little extra shut-eye before Ramos wakes her up. The leaders of the underground were all gathered in the same place, wanting to talk with Eva and set aside the last pieces of the operation she had been carrying out for months. It was time for them to leave. All except for Eva, that is. She had decided she would stay back and look over the grounds out to the city that she loved and make sure that everyone was safe. Maybe she felt she could still find her family, holding on to that last hope that they were still alive, or perhaps she'd picked up on a shortwave message from someone they had missed before. I'm unsure, and we don't really get full motivations for her wanting to stay. Still, she felt the lights had to stay on, at least, for those that needed an out, if anyone still existed. Maybe it's just the same as always. She wanted to pay back those that had fought for her as the Guardians or otherwise, and make sure that they were safe. Or maybe it was just to ensure that everyone was safe, and it was just her looking out for the family that she had called home, that had adopted her in as the city and the tower was. Eva's health wasn't the best. She was thinner than usual and was running on light sleep. Supplies had to be a minimum, or she didn't feel like she needed them quite as much with her position not being out in the field itself. She was a twig, and she could barely recognize herself in the mirror anymore. For all of her and their efforts, however, the underground felt they had won. All of those in the city that were left either refused to leave or couldn't leave. Reports of cells in the underground, or just other holdouts in general, being overrun still came in, and this is what led to the final mission. Evac to the farm, meet up with Hawthorne and the group, return to some semblance of humanity. She turned away from the window to head downstairs when the explosion ripped through the street in front of the apartment, and Eva's world turned white. Let's return to the scannables I had played earlier on. We'll replay them as I feel they take on a different light after hearing this story.
Look at all these inventory notes. Looks like everyone is trying to get the tower's market back on track. Tess, Banshee, Rahul, Eva Levante. They're all working together on this stuff. I keep expecting to show up in the bazaar and see Eva Levante here. This spot's right around where she used to set up shop. I haven't heard much about her since we reclaimed our home, other than that she survived. No one's heard from her in a while, though.
I'm very convinced that Eva is dead. Some feel that this white light at the end was the traveler waking up, but I have a hard time believing this thanks to the explosion that was heard in the streets below. This would explain the counter-evidence that is seen in these scannables no more than a few seconds apart in the tower and our high wall in the city. No one has seen Eva, but yet she was said to be alive. That is, at least alive by the news that Tess had been told, which was done before she was able to evac or leave. Perhaps others had heard word that she was alive over time, but whether she had evac'd or returned to the farm, that part is unknown. It could be she did survive, but she hasn't returned to the tower or the high wall or any other part in order to help the efforts down below in the city to recover and help with the rebuilding efforts. It could be she is working with the cell members that may have also survived the blast of whatever had hit the streets below, and they're making sure that everyone is able to relocate again and find their families. There are far too many options. For me, however, the evidence that the books that Eva kept, along with her logistical knowledge of the tower, was helping to keep the tower moving and to help it recover. It's not her presence so much as it is her knowledge and understanding of everything she so loved that keeps her within the tower. In that way, she has survived in spirit. To me, however, the Levantes are no more of this world. There's a bit of spinfoil that came from this, however. If Tess was the only one that knew about Eva being alive, did she help to orchestrate the deaths of the underground? After all, having every single cell member in the same area would have been a great blow to disorganize to keep the farm safe, or just to help in driving up her profits for her business. This got dark kind of quick. It's also not a really good way to remember Eva. In the end, she would have wanted us to just smile and keep on being kind to one another. For me, that's what I've always loved about Eva as a character. I guess this proves she wasn't a hidden either, as I had speculated over time. She was just another remarkable individual that loved to help her guardian protectors. I hope you guys enjoyed this look into the life of Eva Levante. I'll have the readings of this book up as soon as I can as well. I think it might help you to listen and understand what's happening more on your own, minus my own interpretations. I really hope to do more lore like this. It's relaxing to just extrapolate themes and pieces from these books rather than go into heavy spinfoil all the time as I try to push myself to do. If you also liked it, you know the buttons to press to let me know, along with subscribing to hear more from the future, and of course that dumb bell because YouTube still doesn't know what it's doing. And when I say more, I'm hoping to do much, much more. I have to thank the over 26,000 of you one more time for being so patient with me over the course of the last couple of months. It's been rough going, and it's been tough for me to get through much other than reading the material that we've been presented. I'm hoping that starts to change. I feel much better. Mentally and physically, I'm in a better place than I was before. Your support has meant so much to me, even without me posting videos. It's my turn to give back to you for almost 2 months of silence. Until next Spacetime Guardians, just smile and pass on some kindness to another. It's what Eva would have wanted. Take care.